morning. It's lovely to see you. Let me start with a little bit of a story. I have the ability at times to try and say one thing, and just because of the choice of my words, say something quite different, or, just comes across slightly different. I've probably done it as I've preached, and I do apologise if I ever have done that. Sarah can tell you probably quite a few stories. I'll just pick out one really quickly. When we were moving up to Nottingham, we were, I think at that point we were still just girlfriend, boyfriend, and was I? I don't think I was I? So moving up there, and I was going to an interview, and I explained to them, I'm here with my colleague. I'm in Nottingham with my colleague. And then I managed to somehow tell that to Sarah, and it didn't go down terribly well. She said, I'm your colleague? But the story I want to tell you is, picture me, I'm 7, 8 years old, living in London, and I said something to my mum that she never let me forget, right up towards even reminding me in the last few weeks of her life. And I just happened to say to her one day, as a 7, 8-year-old, "You're not like a proper mum." And she said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, you're not like Stephen's mum. Now, Stephen was my friend in primary school. You're not like Stephen's mum, because she wears a pinny and makes cakes and is always there at home. And whereas my mum, at that point, she was a single parent with 3 children, with a full-time job in the NHS. We often would come home and would have a key and open up. And if you think back in the 70s, that was quite an unusual thing. And I meant to say, you're not like a proper mum, but you're better. But she just heard this, you're not like a proper mum. And I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. She just would tease me about that for the rest of my life. That's not a way, as we're going to be looking today at this command to say, honour your mother and father. That's not the best way to honour your mother and father, by coming up with a phrase that isn't very, very helpful. But just before I get into this, and here is the command, honour your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. I'm very, very conscious that this becomes a very... I've got to pick my words right now, don't I? It's very personal. This becomes very emotive. This becomes quite difficult, because as soon as I say honour your father and mother, you are now thinking of personal experiences. And maybe, like me, you've lost a mother or a father. Or like people are walking through difficult situations where because of experiences, it becomes difficult to honour your mother or father because of the way that you were treated or experiences that you went through. I'm very, very conscious, and in some respects, I can't speak into every single example or every single situation. I will tackle and look at some of these more difficult things a little bit later on. And later on in the talk, I want us to think about what it means for our natural families, our church family, and our heavenly family. And I want to look at it in that context. But please, if I don't mention your personal circumstances or situations or difficulties with this, it's not because it doesn't matter or it's not important. It's just because I'm not looking at that. Does that make sense? It's just, I'm just so aware. I say that phrase, honour your father and mother, and every single one of you is now processing that through your own experiences. And I want us just to step back a little bit, but not ignore those. Just let me give you a few little thoughts around this fifth commandment that I've picked up as I've been looking and thinking about this. It's amazing what you can pick out of just a few words. To some extent, this is a pivot commandment. It's pivoting from the first four commandments are looking at God, and now we're turning around and we're looking at community. And so we've looked at God, about putting God first, about having no other idols, about not taking his name in vain, about keeping the Sabbath day holy. And now we are pivoting through family into community and community living. And so it's quite an important one, this. And I think to some extent, is God putting an order here? That it's God first, then family, then others? I've got to be really careful, and without getting political, there are certain political opinions happening around our world which are misquoting these sort of things. Actually, I think our heart is to, as I'll show in a minute, family is not just my nuclear family, it is a much wider thing. And yes, there are calls on us to be the ones who look after our family, but that doesn't mean we don't look after others, or we ignore others. And actually, who are others? Others is everybody. There isn't a hierarchy of how we love other people. But we may come into that as we go through. But I think this does show something about the high value that God has on family. Just a few verses. Genesis, it's not good for man to be alone. God looked at man and said, you need a family unit. We need family. We need these groupings around us. And that also gets replicated through our church family and through that sense of community that God creates. Deuteronomy 10, he defends the causes of the fatherless and the widow. So not only is God about family, but he's about those that feel disconnected from family. He loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. So God's family isn't just limited to those that we know or those that we like or those that are like us. It's wider than that. I love this one in Psalm 68. God sets the lonely in families. And we see that through the work that many of you are doing, the families who are doing that through Safe Families, through 100 Homes and so on. But there's also the wider context as people are connected in the church family and have felt part of something. And God sets the lonely in families. And then, as we'll look at right at the end, Ephesians 1, God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. You see how family becomes central to God's purposes. But not, the biblical sense of a family was an extended family. It wasn't this nuclear, mum, dad, and 2.4 children. It was an extended family of cousins and wider, but also those that were just brought into that. And so there is that sense when we talk about family, don't think of something small, but think of something encompassing and embracing. We probably overlook this, where it talks about honor your father and mother. Put this in the context of the time. This was a very male-dominated patriarchal society. The man was the head of the house. It was about the man. And in a sense, the woman was just there, in some senses, just as there as part of the process of family. But God says, honor your father and mother. And I think at the time that would have been very countercultural. To us now, it's not. But I think at the time that would have been breaking some of that patriarchal, that male-centered focus that there was in those societies, and would have probably would have come across quite controversial. Honor your father and mother. Now, some of the writers of the commentaries have tried to look at the Ten Commandments and look at the patterns in them. And if you like patterns, quite a lot of the Bible is written with patterns hidden in it. And there's a sense, as we've gone through the first four commandments, have you noticed they've been about thought or heart, about words and about deeds? It was about loving God and choosing to put him right. Then it was about the words that we say about not taking his name in vain. Then it was about deeds, how we behave on the Sabbath. And then we have this one, honor your mother, father. And then as we go back, we see the descending through deeds, words, and heart. And you'll see that. It'll be about deeds. Do not murder, do not commit adultery. About words, do not slander other people. About our heart or our thoughts, do not covet. And so there's this symmetry, if you like. And we have this command that I know it's not in the middle, but it's this pivot command. And I think it encompasses all three. That we are to honor, how do we honor? And we'll look at that in a moment, through thoughts, through words, through deeds. And I think this command, in a sense, covers all three. But that's just a little thing you might consider in terms of the pattern. It's a command that we've probably misrepresented because we've used it as parents to say, God says you must honor me. Children, you must honor your parents. And it's a command that maybe you think should be taught outside in the kids' groups. Actually, the Ten Commandments weren't written to kids, they were written to adults. And so I don't think, even though this does apply to children, it also applies to adults. And again, if you think of society then, there was no social security. There's no pension scheme. How were the elderly looked after? By their families. And so it's a reminder to the families, honor those who are older than you. Those who no longer can work and bring in the grain or whatever the tasks are, but honor them, respect them, look after them. And so it was a pension scheme or a social care scheme that God was putting in place for the good of society. And so I think there is something here written to us as adults who are children, as well as to us who are parents. And we'll look at that as we go through. Paul mentions in Ephesians, this is the only command that has a promise. I want to disagree with Paul, because I don't know if it's a promise or a consequence. I think there's a difference. I don't think it's a promise in the sense of, if you honor your parents, then I, God, will make your lives long. I think it's probably more of a consequence. As you honor your parents, you will create societies that are stable, and you therefore will live long. I think it's more of a consequence for a reason. There's a sense of, as you show honor, I think honor is part of the journey of forgiveness. And so for those who have gone through difficult seasons or circumstances with family and parents, I think part of honoring someone is part of that journey of showing forgiveness, as you choose to speak well of them, as you choose to honor them. And I think, and in a sense, if we are people who are forgiving, we will live longer lives. Have you ever seen someone that is living with unforgiveness? It's almost like sort of they become embittered, and everything, and their life and their world shrinks. And I think God is saying, as we show honor, we're on a journey of forgiveness, and therefore there will be that sense of we will breathe more, we will live longer. But there's also a sense here, the family unit is the core of society. It's what allows society to thrive. You just need to look at statistics. I mean, yes, I'm from a broken home. I hope I've done okay through my life. But you look at statistics of the impact of broken homes or the lack of a father or a mother figure in people's lives, and the impact that has then on their futures. And so in a sense, as we show honor, as we respect this family unit, God says you will live long and prosperous lives. You will live well in the land. Another thought that one of the commentaries talked about is that it says honor, not love. When Jesus summarizes the Ten Commandments, he says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbors yourself. But this command doesn't say love your mother and father. It says honor your mother and father. You think of all the other commands, we are to love people and love this and love that. This one says honor. And then I think when you have something like that, you've got to stop and say, why? Why is it saying honor, not love? And I think that speaks into those who have had difficult family situations. It doesn't say you have to love or like, but you honor. And honor is a choice, as we'll look at in a minute, rather than an emotional response. But also as parents, this is telling us that our children should honor us, not love us necessarily. Hear me? I'm doing it again, aren't I? Let me get this right. If we are setting out for our children to love us, we will do what they want us to do. We will buy them the things that they want. We will set the world to suit them. But that, we know, is not the route to success. If we want our children to honor us, we will do the honorable right things that might be difficult and might mean the children don't like the things we are choosing, but they are the right things because we know they are the right things and they lead to life. And we need, as parents, to be setting an environment that is honorable rather than is just creating love and a nice response. Does that make sense? And I think we've got to make sure that we get all of those balances right. And we might pick up a little bit of that in a moment. But let me move on, because I took a little bit longer on that than I was expecting. And let's just have a look at this word honor. What does honor mean? Honor means high respect and great esteem. Honor is a choice. You don't need to love someone to honor them. Let me give you an example. Picture a court judge. He's not a very nice one. He has a bad reputation. But when that particular judge walks into the courtroom, everybody stands up because they are showing honor, not because they like the person, they're showing honor to the position. And they are choosing to honor that person. And so in a sense, honor is a decision or a choice. Someone else said, honor is letting someone know you see how valuable they really are. When that court stands up, they are showing honor or value to that person or that position. And as parents, hopefully, we can create an environment that allows people to see the honor and to honor us in that situation. The Bible talks quite a bit about honor. Just a few proverbs here. Let me just pull a few of these out. The wise inherit honor, but fools get only shame. A kind-hearted woman gains honor, but ruthless men gain only wealth. A wise son heeds his father's instructions, but a mocker does not respond to rebukes. And there's loads in Proverbs about honor and where honor comes from and how we can show that. There's a sense, again, this is another quote I picked up, respect is what people have to earn. Honor is a gift you are free to give. If I want your respect, I have to earn it. But honor is a gift that you can give to me or to whoever as a choice. Does that make sense? In a way, honor is taking the thoughts, our thoughts of somebody, and turning them into words and deeds, and turning them into actions. Is this command just an Old Testament command? That's a question we always need to ask ourselves. Well, I mentioned this verse in Ephesians. Jesus talks about this command, but not in a positive way, because he attacks the Pharisees, saying you're not really doing this command. But Paul says the following: children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may be well with you and that you may live long on the earth. And then Romans, if you like, the whole thing of honor is a wider thing. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. And so this principle of honoring is a current New Testament principle. It is for us to think through and to put into application. So let me get into some practical thoughts. I want to pick up on 3 practical things in terms of our families, in terms of our church family, and then just to finish thinking about our heavenly family. You'll have to clip me on, Sam. I've lost control. This, if you like, the words I've got up there are a paraphrase you could have of this psalm. This command. Adult children, honor your aging parents whose days have been long upon the land, that your days may be long as well. And that might be a paraphrase that we could take. Adult children, honor your aging parents whose days have been long upon the land, that your days may be long as well. Now, I mentioned in those days there was no care system. There was no pension schemes. In these days there are, and in some respects we can almost say, well, it's not our problem now, is it? Because the state can sort it out. But we still have a duty towards our parents, if they're still alive, to be caring and to show support. For those that have walked through this journey, there is something to be very, very aware of, which is this difficulty of this transfer from the carer or the caregiver to the cared for. And that's a difficult thing for people to walk through. Whereas a parent, at one point, they were the caregivers. They were the ones that looked after. But then they get to a point where they are no longer able to be the caregivers, they have to be the care receivers. And for those of you who are looking after and caring for elderly parents, that's a journey you've got to walk through, both for yourselves and for them as well, because it can be quite disempowering, can't it? So suddenly you're no longer able to do the things that you were able to do. But it's an honourable thing to just help them on that journey, to show love, to continue to be those carers. And I want to honour those in this room today who are doing that, who are showing their care for elderly parents, who are investing hours and hours and hours of your life to care for people. And it's the right thing, and well done. You're doing the right thing. 1 Timothy, Paul writing there, says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith. It's the right thing to do, isn't it? It's the right thing to do, to care for, to be there, to be those supporters. And I just pray God's strength for those of you who are doing that at the moment. I pray God's strength, that you will know his strength and his provision as you continue to be those carers and you continue on that journey. I did mention difficult circumstances. What about for difficult circumstances? What about for those of us who have lost parents? How do you respond here? Well, I think we can honour their memory in the way that we live. I hope that the choices I make in my life, even though my mum wasn't a Christian, she didn't follow God in that sense, but she taught me well of how to live, attitudes to life, etc. I hope the way that I live honours her. And it's a way, that's one thing we can do. We can remember them, we can speak well of them, but we can live in a way that honours their memory and honours their legacy. But what about difficult situations? And many of us have gone through difficult situations through childhood where it becomes difficult to show honour. A quote I came across. All of us have parents, but not all of us have ones who are easy to honor. Let me just clarify here. Honor doesn't mean we ignore or we overlook. Honor doesn't mean that we say whatever happened in the past is just forgotten about. No. There are still consequences. There are still things that need to happen. There's processes, etc. But honor I think it's part of that journey of forgiveness, which is a difficult journey. And this quote, let me just add this in, because I'm not going to say that this is the easy way forward. We must ask God for grace to show honor as far as it is possible. It may be in your circumstance it's not possible to honor somebody because of what has happened. It may be that you try to show honor and it's rejected. We must ask God for grace to show honor as far as it is possible. And if you are walking through a difficult season or situation or memories of things from the past, I just pray God will release you from those and will heal you and bring you hope. But the good is God has placed us in another family. God has placed us in the church family. He has placed us with brothers and sisters, with parents in the faith. Paul is writing this to Timothy, and he's talking about a natural family, but I just want to use this as an example of talking about the extended family, the church family. Paul talking to Timothy, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, the faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. This inheritance of faith as things are invested into you. And so all of us can honor parents in the faith. And there are probably people you can remember who have spoken into you and have been there for you over time. I can remember 3 individuals for when I was a teenager: Bernie, Nigel, and Peter. Bernie, Nigel, and Peter were the 3 young men, they probably were young men in those days, who ran the youth group where I became a Christian. Bernie was the guy who, when I first made a decision to follow Jesus, said to me, come round for tea every week and let's look at the Bible. And for 2-3 months we sat down and looked at the Bible, and he went through some early discipleship with me. And then Nigel came along and ran the youth group, and Nigel gave me, as a 16-year-old, the opportunities to preach in a church. I feel sorry for that church. I don't know quite what I was like in those days. And then invested in, and then Peter picked up later and just built up that encouragement. And I can remember a number of years ago, the church where I became a Christian was having an anniversary, and I chose, with a friend, we drove down specifically to go along to say thank you to these gentlemen, because I knew they would be there. And I wanted to show honor to them. And I wanted to respect what they had invested into me as spiritual parents. Is there someone you can say thank you to? Is there someone you can recognize for what they have done? But let me just turn it around and challenge each of us. Can we be a Bernie to someone? Can you be a Bernie to someone? Can you get alongside someone and encourage them and build into them and just be that spiritual parent for them? Doesn't mean you have to be older than them. You probably just need to be further in the faith than them. But just to be a Bernie, to get alongside someone, to encourage, to support, to be a spiritual parent to them. And as I look around, there are so many people here who can do that. It might be, we've been talking about volunteering, that you can do it practically through Sunday mornings in the kids groups, or Friday night at KFC, and you can be a spiritual parent through there. You can be a Bernie through those and invest your time. Or you might just want to get alongside. So it might be towards some of the wonderful younger people in our church, or it might be to someone else in the church. Just encourage them, build them up, be a blessing to them. Can we be a Bernie to someone? So we've thought about our natural families. We've thought about the church family. Let me finish on these two encouragements. Let's think about the fact that we are part of God's family. Because I want us to not... I'm aware I may have talked about some things that have been uncomfortable as you focused in on family and parents. But I want us all to remember that we are part of God's family. We are his. And just 2 verses. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. Whatever your situation is, God is there to show compassion and love to you. God is there for you. If you've had a bad experience of a father or a parent, don't impose that on God, because he's good. If you've had a difficult experience or you felt disconnected, don't then look at God and say, therefore you are disconnected. God is not a reflection of our parents on earth. Our parents on earth should be a reflection of God. And if they haven't been, I'm sorry. That's what we should be. But we can't do it the other way and look at our parents and then say, well, that's what God's like. Or in 1 John, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. We, at the ends of it, can say, we are children of God. We can do what we can to honor our earthly parents. If they're here or in memory, we can walk through that as best we can. We can do what we can to be parents, spiritual parents within the church. But let's remember that we are children of a heavenly Father. And we can show him, as that's the song that we sang at the end of this morning, honor and glory and praise to his name. We can give him honor because he is worthy of that. Let me just pray. Jesus, thank you that we are welcomed into family. Thank you that you are our brother, heavenly Lord God. Thank you that you are our heavenly Father. And whatever our human experiences have been, our earthly experiences, I pray that we will know that we are loved by you. We know that we are safe and accepted by you. And that we are part of your family. And we are welcomed. But may we respond in whatever way we can, through honoring, through being spiritual parents, whatever it is that we need to do today, Lord. May we be honorable in that. But we thank you for the families you've placed us in. We thank you for all that you've put into us. And may we as parents, if we're parents here, may we be honorable in what we do. And as children, may we show honor where we can. We thank you, Jesus. Amen.